Today I would like to talk about the MMORPG New World, but I want to take a different approach to this conversation. I'm not going to be telling you whether I recommend you buy this or not. I will be showing you early game, and I will be talking more about that and what I think about the early game. And there's a specific reason I'm doing this. Most of the time you see games being talked about as either a review or should you buy, glitches, bugs, things of that nature, or a tutorial, which I might do tutorials for this later on. I'm unsure of that right now. But what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be looking at what you expect in realistic gameplay. So what I'm going to be showing you is purely unedited what you see in the game and what it looks like early game. So we're not going to be doing any PvP war faction missions or anything like that. I'm just going to purely show you a simple quest point A to point B and what it really looks like. And it's going to cover some of the concern or some of the issues some people have with it. I will talk about that because it does affect the early game, and that is travel and mounts. So we'll be discussing that as well as we get further into things. Without further ado, let's get into this. Now I'm going to jump straight to the point here with the traveling and the mounts. A lot of people pan this game as a running or walking simulator, and let me be honest with you, you're going to be running and or walking a lot. And I feel as though, since I don't work for the company directly, I can't say this as a fact, but I feel as though they did this intentionally with the mindset of, we want you to see the world that we've built and enjoy it for that without just rushing through it. And a lot of MMOs, when you get mounts, like Terra for example, or even Guild Wars 2, you can kind of fly over the landscape and just shoot right by it. In this game, you actually get to enjoy and feel the landscape as you run through it. Now, am I saying that I agree that there should be no mounts ever at the end? No, I would like it for when I don't really feel like doing all of that. However, there's another feature about this game that having mounts in it might take away from. That feature is crafting. Now you might be like, hey, Monolith Brookshadow, hold on. Grab your horses, hold them, and keep them in the stable. There are other MMOs with crafting involved where you have to actually go gather, and there's mounts. Even Final Fantasy XIV, for example, has mounts, wonderful mounts, beautiful mounts, and there's still an emphasis on crafting. Well, this game approaches it differently. As a player who really doesn't like crafting in games, I normally don't play MMORPGs and craft. It's not something I really enjoy doing. I have found it very immersive in this game. I've enjoyed it. Am I saying that you will? I have no idea, but let me explain to you why I do. See, the crafting in this game kind of takes the sting out of all the walking you're about to see me do, and it also sidetracks me. Typically, I get sidetracked by side quests. You know, I'm doing my main quest, then bada bing, bada boom, there's a side quest that pops up, and I have to go help this random citizen out of the goodness of my heart. It's for the experience. It's not out of the goodness out of my heart. I promise you that. But in this game, I end up finding stuff that I need or want to increase my crafting level, because this game does have levels in crafting. I will talk more in depth about that on another video. I'm just specifically talking about how the early game feels and things of that nature right now, the movement and the momentum of the game itself without mounts and the crafting and how that actually affects the movement. You'll see me get distracted in this video a lot, be it to fight something because I have to get from point A to point B and it's a long walk, to get something off of my back to help someone else out for no real reason, honestly, to carve something up because you can carve animals that you face and kill, or to harvest things. Now, that's a big thing for me. So I have recipes. Of course, you go to your crafting station, and the towns have a lot of crafting stations. Again, another video for another time. We're not going to talk about that specifically in this one. They have a lot of crafting stations for different things, for, you know, your different uses. In those cases, they show you what you need. Now it's up to you to figure out what it is that gives you what you need, unless you, of course, go look it up or you go look for it yourself or ask somebody else who knows. Maybe you have a friend who knows. And that's pivotal, I think, and I'll touch on that in a second about having people to play this game with, because I think it really helps the experience. So once you discover this, you go out into the world and you actually start not crafting, you actually start harvesting, chopping, mining, but you have to make your tools, which they take you through the tutorial, and it's a pretty straightforward, pretty good, pretty quick tutorial on the mining tools that you need, what you use you use these tools to mine with, or harvest with, or gather with, things of that nature. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple, and easy to follow. However, the one thing I will advise, and it might seem like a tedious and arduous process in the very beginning, but when you're in that tutorial starting level, right, and they teach you these things about the tools that you need, and they have you craft them for free, essentially, they have you get the stuff to craft them, but, it's not really costing you anything other than your time. I recommend you stay in that area and you mine and you harvest and you gather as much as your brain will allow you to, because it will get your skills boosted up to a point that when you get to the main hub, your first starting area, which everyone has a different starting area, mind you, it's not all the same. When you get there, you should have the supplies to craft certain things towards the build that you want. In addition to that, with the weapons, they are what gives you your skills in this game. So wanting to craft a specific weapon, you might want to, since the game has been out a little while, unless you want to go in vanilla, look up what you need to make these weapons and the areas that you can find specific harvested or mining or gathered items to in fact craft these things. And again, with the crafting, it's such an immersive thing, and this is why, because you can't just focus, you can try, but you can't just focus on one major thing that you want to do. If you want to be a blacksmith, so on and so forth, because at some point you're gonna have to craft and or just outright buy from the open market, because they do have an open market in the game. Outright buy it from there in order to make the item that you want to make. So it really enforces and kind of pushes in a not so aggressive way, hey, you need to be focused on all of the attributes of your craft: gathering, mining, harvesting, things of that nature, and even skinning, because that is something that you do need. Now you'll notice as I'm running through, there's going to be a few things that I run into that I can't mine, I can't hack, I can't carve, or I can't harvest because I don't have that level built up, which leads me back to that point about, you want to make sure that you do these things in the beginning area as much as you're able to mentally withstand doing that. Now, while you might be initially worried about going into the game vanilla and not knowing anything about your weapon, understand this. The skills that you learn from these weapons, and they do have a max level of 20, the skills that you learn from these weapons, you can respec for free. So you can try a build out. If it doesn't work for you, respec it, so on and so forth. And you have a maximum of 2 weapons that you can switch between, which you'll see me do pretty often. One thing I do want to touch on, because I've played a lot of MMOs, and I have, and I'm going to continue, is that the aggro system in this game is rather strange. You can get aggro from a monster that's extremely far away from you, and I'm not sure how you fell into its line of sight, and it will follow you for a very long time. Or you can walk by one and it doesn't aggro to you at all. It just kind of lets you chill and go on by. You'll notice that a few times within this little playthrough that you're seeing here. And then on that note, I'm not sure if it happens here, I can't really remember. They will serpentine to you sometimes for no real reason. Like, none whatsoever. It's just a weird thing with their AI. I'm not sure if it's actually intentional or if it's something that just slipped through the cracks, but you'll notice that here too. Now, while you can skip the whole crafting aspect of this game altogether and just buy stuff out of the open market, I highly discourage it, because that will take a lot of the fun out of the game, in my opinion, for you. Because a lot of the actions that you actually do simply come from doing those things and stopping in the town, but there are some quality of life things I would like to point out with the crafting that I enjoy heavily. For example, everything that you see inside of your inventory that is a craftable tool, when you go into town and you put it in storage, and I'll talk more about this on another video if I decide to make it, based on the town storage that you're at, you can still craft from that storage. So you can empty out your inventory into the storage and craft from there, as opposed to having all the stuff in your inventory, because you can be encumbered by it. In addition to that, bullets and arrows do take a lot of weight in your inventory, which, and I misspoke earlier, might make you over encumbered. But that's easily mitigated. You can just put them in your storage as well. Now, they won't float into your inventory when you're out in the world. If you need bullets, you need to go back to your storage if you leave them there. So I keep a decent little stack without having to worry about my inventory just having too much weight inside of it. Weight inside of MMOs is not something I've ever really liked, honestly, but it feels pretty balanced in this. It's not so much that it's just every little thing that you pick up is like, oh no, I gotta go back. And I think they did that intentionally, simply because going back would take a long time, even with fast traveling active, because there is a fast travel, method in this game. Even with that active, it can still be a really arduous task to get back to where you need to be, or if in fact you haven't even gone to the area, then you can't fast travel there. That's you know, a staple in any game that has fast traveling. You have to achieve the location first. And on that note, when we're talking about the traveling and the walking simulator, as you go through different areas, you do get a little bit of experience, and they've done this in other MMOs too, and I like that. I like that they reward you for adventuring and for traveling, because it is a game about adventuring. So at the end of the day, you don't want your players to just be upset that they have to walk this far without any kind of spoils from it, aside from the harvesting, mining, and gathering, because some people might not enjoy that. I personally do, and if it's something that you do enjoy inside of your MMOs or gaming in general, I recommend this game, even though I don't really sit here and say that this is a recommendation or not a recommendation. There are things about it that are enjoyable, and if that is your thing, then yeah, sure. But when it comes down to it, I do not believe that traveling time is something to really pan the game for, because they fill it with things for you to do within that space. It's not something that you're just traveling and it's a blank area. I've done road trips. I drive for a living as well. And there are some areas, there's just a stretch of the road where it's nothing. This game is absolutely not like that. No matter where you are, there's something to do. You might not realize there's something to do, but there is. Now, I do want to talk about something that's a bit weird and kind of an elephant in the room, and I want to put this out there so people don't think I just skipped over it intentionally or anything of that nature. You don't swim in this game at all. Now, you do have a thing that shows how much time you have until you need to breathe, but you just walk underneath the water. I don't know why you don't swim. That might be something that you change soon in a patch. It's just really awkward. You're walking and then suddenly you're submerged and no animation changes. You just keep freaking walking. Now, if you have not noticed, I open the map a lot. And that's not something indicative of the game being bad with directions. I am bad with directions, so I want to put that out there right now. It's not because the game does not show you where you need to go. Most people can look at a map and be like, alright, this is where I'm going. I cannot do that, so that is purely on me. In addition to this, you will notice that there are some wild animals that are just roaming about. Some of them get dropped in one hit like rabbits and turkeys. So with that, those are primarily your starting skinning things. And I know that sounds awful, but it is what it is. In order to level up your skinning to get different types of hides, you would want to farm those. And they are spread out sporadically. They're everywhere. You're not going to go anywhere where there's not a turkey, let me tell you that right now. Rabbits are a little bit harder to find, but there's still plenty of them out there. They have actual animals that are enemies, like wolves and boars, and again, you'll find that you can't skin some of them at the beginning because your skinning level isn't high enough. I would also like to take this opportunity to highlight a few other things, and one of the things that people will see as a negative right from the jump, I want to bring attention to, and I don't want people to think I'm just sugarcoating things and, just skipping over the bad parts or whatever. The mobs, which are the monsters or the creatures that you run into, throughout the beginning parts of the game, as of yet at level 17, are pretty much the same. You'll get skeletal zombies, you'll get zombies, and you'll get random animal interaction. You might get a lynx, a crocodile, a bear, or a tiger here and there, but for the most part, it feels like you're fighting the same thing, so to speak, with a few different variables and changes in their attack patterns, but not so much where it's not noticeable. And for a lot of people, that can be an issue. Some people actually take a big issue with the idea that they don't have varying mobs because it makes them feel as though the game did not have a lot of effort put into it, that the game is just bare bones, and if you're releasing a AAA MMO game, come on Amazon, you could have done better than that. And to that, I can't fully disagree. Now, it's not something that bothers me a whole hell of a lot, but it is something that I could see would bother people. So I wanted to touch on that to actually let you know that, yeah, that is a thing. That is something that's there. So most of the takeaway here that I want you guys to gather from is your harvesting and mining and crafting plays a big part in the beginning of the game, and it will continue to play a huge part in the rest of the game, which I'll do more videos as I get into the meat and bones of it. The enemies are typically samesies as you go through it, and the inventory, while it does have a weight limit, does not super hinder you simply because of how the storage works. Now, I want to reiterate this. The storage system works on a place-by-place basis, so whatever city or main hub you're in, that storage is where it's going to pull from for your crafting. You could go to one storage and see that there's nothing in there, and vice versa wherever you dropped your items. Again, there is an open free market for the trade system, and right now, as of me making this video, it has not been exploited and prices have not been gouged out indefinitely. Another thing that I would like to touch on is the factions. Now, there are factions in this game that they don't really operate much different than one another. You don't really get super difference as far as boons are concerned. Not that I've noticed anyway. However, you can do faction quests that are PvE that help grow your standing with the faction, and you can purchase specific items from the faction that are strong. I'll dig more into that in another video as well. I'm not trying to do too much in this video aside from show you the bare basics at the beginning of the game and kind of go over the general idea of it so you can decide if this sounds like something you'd like to play. Now, with the factions, there are faction wars, and something that I didn't see or notice being talked about before the game's released, there are actually invasions. If you notice, at a certain point in the video, I will or have walked through an area that turned completely red, and there's red markers throughout the world, and these pop up randomly. They spawn in, kind of like the chains in Elder Scrolls Online that just drop down, except there's not a loud sound to alert you, or at least not one that I've caught anyway. Now, your forts that you are holding for your faction can be invaded by these creatures as well, and you have to fight them off. Not to mention the random invasions that happen throughout the world, like what I passed through. Now, I haven't really messed with that too much because my level, my personal level, not my weapon level or anything like that, my character level is too low for that right now. I could be risky and be like, hey, yeah, throw caution to the wind and let's just get out there and do this. But I'm not going to do that. I don't feel like dying and having to walk as far back as wherever the heck it was I was at to where I was going. That is another thing that you're definitely going to want to pay attention to. You do have potions and you do have food that you can cook as far as the crafting is concerned. Again, it all basically comes back to that. And the food you cook does different things. Stamina, health, mana, you name it. Same with the potions, clearly. Now, when you use a potion, the food does not go on cooldown, but the potion does. That's something important to note, that when you use one, it will go on cooldown, but the other thing does not. They are not mutually exclusive. You can use one and then the other. And with that being said, it's important to keep an eye on your health. When I was playing this and streaming it, one of my friends kept telling me, your health's bothering me, and I had to keep reminding him, hey, you know, my potions are on cooldown, and I didn't have food at the time. I didn't stop and make food. Now, that is another thing. You can, in fact, set up a fire if you have the right ingredients to make the fire, you know, if you have crafted the right amount of things to make said fire. You can set up a fire in certain places, which you might have seen pop up on the screen every now and then when I was walking through certain areas, and you can rest there and you can quote-unquote craft. Now, what it's talking about is actually cooking. You can make simple tools, sure, but you can't, like, craft a jewel at the fire, at least not that I've seen yet. So that's a neat little feature. You could actually do the cooking out in the wild. That way you can actually, you know, get some rations or whatever if you're out of potions, because you can also craft potions. That's a thing as well. Now, while there is an open trade market, I have yet to find an actual just full-on shop in and of itself that's not tied to a faction or anything like that, just some place you can go buy potions and things of that nature. I haven't found one yet. That's not to say there isn't one. I haven't found one. But to be fair, I have not actually been looking that hard. I just sort of looked and let it be what it was. So with that, guys, this is my general idea of what the beginning of New World feels like, and I hope that kind of gave you some idea of what you're getting into when you look into the game, when you're thinking about playing it, when your friends are requesting it. And before I let off of this, I do need to talk about that because I said I would, and I apologize. This is raw, unedited, uncut. If you play this solo, which I've been doing for the most part, it can still be fun, but let me tell you, the fun increases when you have a group of people that are helping you with faction duties, helping you complete quests, helping you with gathering, helping you giving you tools and things that you were supposed to go gather, and letting you craft items to build up your crafting instead of having you go out and find it yourself. Mind you, I still recommend that, but with friends, this game is phenomenal. Without friends, it's good. There's a lot of room to grow. I mean, there is a lot of room to grow. And of course, I'm not going to be zany and not touch on the elephant in the room. If you're running an NVIDIA GPU, please be careful with this game. Also, do not overclock your card while playing this game, as to help avoid any sort of problems that may occur and cause you to lose your card, because we all know how hard cards are to come by right now. Well, anyway, I hope this was informative.